if we can amend it to add that, I would appreciate that opportunity. All right. So this is where it gets tricky as far as voting goes. So if you are a voting member of AADA, I realize we might have some visitors with us today, which is wonderful, welcome. But I'd ask you, if you're a visitor, to abstain from any votes. If you vote to approve the agenda for today, if you could please either say aye or that's probably the easiest. I'm also looking at this chat feature, but that might get overwhelming. Could we just see if we could say aye?
Aye.
Hey, call, everything okay in the meeting?
Aye. Any opposed? For the agenda, it can be all members. All right, any opposed? Abstentions? Okay. All right, thank you. And then this one is for the board members who have had hopefully the opportunity to review the board meeting minutes that BJ has sent out. Could I have a motion to approve the April 17th board meeting minutes?
I move, Katie.
I second, Suzanne.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, so this is just for board members. All in favor of approving the April 17th board meeting minutes, please say aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? All right, thank you for that little bit of housekeeping business. As we are continuing on through our agenda today, what I'd like to do is just introduce you to the 2019-2020 board. If you are on a screen and you wanted to wave once your name is announced, go for it. But it's an unusual format that we're in, so we're just going with it. So as your president for this past year, I'd like to again welcome you here, and it's been an honor to serve. I'm looking forward to sharing with you some of the great things that we've been able to do this past year. Our president-elect is Christian Chan, and I know he'll have a whole bunch to say about some of the great things he has planned for next year. Our past president is Katie Herman Turner, and she had done an excellent job leading us this last year, and I've been so grateful for her mentorship as I've taken on this role. Our secretary is BJ Barksdale, who has done an amazing job of keeping record of all of the things that we have been doing in this division. Our treasurer is John Nance, who is also our incoming president-elect, and he will continue to grace us with his leadership over the next few years, and we're very lucky for that. Our member at large for membership is Matt Fullen, who has been instrumental in reaching out to our membership and coming up with ways to get people involved, engaged, and excited about the things that we're doing here in AADA. Likewise, our member at large for outreach and state branches, Crystal Neal, has been instrumental in reaching out to states to engage and activate state branches of AADA. Our ACA Governing Council representative is Wendy Killam, and she has been on the national front, gathering information and making sure that AADA's voice is represented in ACA as an umbrella division. Our Adult Span Journal editor is Suzanne Deggs-White, and she's been instrumental in making sure that the Adult Span Journal is providing our membership with timely and informative scholarly works from our members and far beyond. And finally, our newsletter editor, Yun Ma, is the one who's responsible for that quarterly outreach to all of you with all of the great information. She's done just a phenomenal job of putting together our newsletter and sending that out to the membership. So thank you to our current board, and especially thank you to Katie and BJ, who after this summer will be cycling off the board, but hopefully will stay involved with AADA and continue to provide your expertise and your talents for the organization. I did want to introduce a couple of new folks to the board who will be starting in July, and I'd like to introduce you to Christian Chan as your incoming president, and John Nance as the president-elect. I'll take on the role of past president. Our incoming secretary will be Kathy Eaton, and our incoming treasurer will be Adrienne Trogdon. Welcome to both of you. We're so excited to have you on the board starting this summer. Hopefully you'll be able to jump right in and feel part of the team. We're sure looking forward to working with you. Our member at large for membership and our member at large for outreach and state branches will remain the same, Matt and Crystal, although Crystal was voted into this position for a full term starting this summer. Wendy, Suzanne, and Yunsa will also continue in their roles. So thank you all for your service. You'll hear at the end about some board opportunities, and those will open up from year to year. So if you're looking to potentially become a board member down the road, keep an eye out for those nominations and elections announcements, and we're always looking for people to join the board and become more involved in the organization, whether on the board or in another capacity. All right, moving on. Wanted to highlight communication that has gone out in a few different platforms now. We are searching for an editor for Adult Span. So we're ideally looking for someone to perhaps start, I don't want to say training, but start to become involved with the newsletter over this next year and begin the role of editor next summer in 2021. So there's been some communications about that, but if you have any questions or want to learn more about that role, don't hesitate to reach out to one of the board members or Suzanne, and we can get you the information that you're looking for. Also, is Becky on this call? I can't see my gallery anymore for awards.
Yes.
Wonderful. Would you be willing to provide that quick update? I know you you sent the platform today, but I'd love to hear how you're envisioning that the next couple of months will go with regard to awards.
Absolutely. So thank you, Amber. And so Christian actually had the great idea to use Google Forms this year for our AADA awards. So we are going to try this out, and I'm very excited about that. So thank you to Christian. And so we just, once the board, or at least Amber and Christian maybe approve that, then we can start sending that out through the newsletter and through our listservs for folks to start nominating people as well as uploading their materials. So we'll just plan to update the website as well as start getting that word out. But as you all who saw the last newsletter have seen that the awards will be due June 1st. So folks have plenty of time to submit those, and then we'll review those and then let award winners know for the grant applications within this fiscal year, so that the budgeting can be accurate. And then we'll share the award winners at the AADA conference. That's at least the plan for right now.
Okay, thank you so much. This is a big undertaking, and we're having to shift gears a little bit to make sure that things still happen, but look a little different than when we're allowed to gather in person.
Absolutely. So thanks, everybody.
Okay, well, I'm excited to share with you the report that I submitted to ACA this morning. Outgoing presidents are asked to provide a division annual report to be reviewed at the governing council meeting, I believe. So I'd like to share with you ours. The Association for Adult Development and Aging had a successful year and is proud to highlight a few key accomplishments during the 2019-2020 fiscal year. AADA had a successful two-day conference in August of 2019 in Chicago, Illinois. Many of you were there. This year's conference had 78 attendees and offered CE hours for 35 content sessions, 6 roundtable discussions, 7 poster sessions, a National Counselor Leadership Panel, and a keynote address by AADA and ACA past president, Dr. Catherine Rowland. In addition, we provided an ethics pre-conference workshop given by Dr. Barbara Herlihy. Presentations highlighted topics related to adult development and counseling adults across the lifespan. The AADA leadership continued to build their 3 task forces dedicated to emerging adults, middle adults, and older adults to expand their engagement with other organizations and AADA members. The Older Adult Task Force held a meeting at the AADA Summer Conference and is currently in the process of reconfiguring its structure. Under the excellent leadership of Dr. Matt Fullen, this task force continues to advocate for Medicare reimbursement for counselors, among other important initiatives. AADA also partnered with Dr. Elizabeth Crunk, chair of the Grief Counseling Competencies Task Force. The goal of this task force is to conduct research on the standards of competence for professional counselors working with clients facing issues of grief and loss, and to develop a set of competencies that outline these standards. The Grief Counseling Competencies Task Force is a 2-year endeavor now in its first year, and its reach across the domains of research, advocacy, and practice is expected to extend beyond that time frame. The Grief Counseling Competencies Task Force held a meeting during the AADA Summer Conference to plan for the year. Our president-elect, Dr. Christian Chan, established a professional development task force this year. The goal of this task force is to provide current and potential AADA members with adult development-focused professional development opportunities right now in the form of quarterly webinars. I had the opportunity to provide the first webinar in January 2020 on the topic of counseling individuals who have experienced pregnancy loss. Dr. Matt Fullen provided the second webinar in April of 2020 on the topic of Medicare advocacy for counselors. The division currently uses several forms of formal and informal communication with members. Members receive updates through our ACA Connect page, constant contact email blasts, a quarterly newsletter, as well as a Facebook page and Twitter account. In addition, members receive the electronic version of our journal Adult Span twice a year. In this publication, AADA members can find the latest peer-reviewed research on adult development and aging with practical interventions useful to all practitioners, students, and educators. Finally, AADA has been collaborating and strengthening our relationships with state branches to provide an added layer of support. This has been done through continued outreach and engagement with branch leaders. Our member at large for outreach and branch divisions, Dr. Crystal Neal, has also served as an AADA state branch president here in Illinois, actually, giving her a unique perspective on how to best work with our state branches. We also worked to increase our overall membership through direct member outreach and had planned to reach out to current and potential members via conference booth and other activities at ACA 2020 in San Diego. Now, of course, we are focusing our efforts toward member outreach over the summer through some virtual AADA events in lieu of the in-person conference that was supposed to be held in August, and planning for ACA 2021 in Orlando. So AADA has had a productive year, and the AADA leadership is fully committed to even greater growth of this division in the upcoming year under the leadership of Dr. Christian Jan. So that report is respectfully submitted and was sent to ACA this morning. With that, I would love to have the opportunity to turn it over to Dr. Chan to talk about his vision for his presidential year.
Thank you, Dr. Randolph. I am super excited. I know that I think many of you who are on this call we've crossed paths, we've connected, we've met, and I know sadly this year we don't have the opportunity to meet in person, but I'm very excited that I'm reconnecting with all of you now. And I think in many ways, what I can still remember is that many years ago, I went to my first AADA conference and felt the magic. And I think from that point, it was, of course, like it makes sense, right? That it comes full circle that I'm president-elect now and that I'm moving into the president role on July 1st. And in many ways, what spoke to me about this division is really figuring out a way that we are working together in tandem with many of the issues that we see across the lifespan. So we're featuring a diverse set of interests that have been so important to enriching the life of this division. I think it's not a surprise that we know from our division that we've had a number of prominent leaders who have gone on to do amazing things, right? So we have leaders who are still very connected to our division and still support and mentor in our division. And we also know that they've also gone on to like governing council positions in ACA, have become editors of journals, have also are prominent counseling journals, and have also provided timely research in much of the work that they're doing. And in addition to that, I mean, some have gone on to become ACA presidents. Many of our leaders have gone on to become ACA presidents. So I think in many ways, when I think about the magic that I felt many years ago, I still feel it today. And I still feel it at a much more exponential level. And it has a lot to do with the relational connections that we have. So of course, like the first piece I mentioned was a diverse set of interests. But the second was really identifying that the fact that we have a number of really relational leaders. And that is what our community is built upon. So many of us, I can think about stories where members and attendees from our conferences each year really feel reconnected, re-energized, and revitalized. And so many have said, the reason why I stay with AADA is because it's not just that I found a home for my interests, but I was able to really build connections here. Some of which those connections, of course, result in scholarship and research, some in community partnerships, some in leadership partnerships, and also in advocacy partnerships. I think in many ways we're seeing, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but we're seeing the relevance of our division and our interest in this division, our mission in this division, shed some light particularly on some of the political and legislative issues that we're seeing today. So I think with that being said, I know that I'm going to jump into two pieces. So one of the themes that I want to share with all of you is really thinking about what my overall vision is, and this has a lot to do with the conference theme and the presidential theme. And the second piece is really thinking and speaking to the different ways that we're going to see this operationalized, right? So I think that's where each of you come in, right? Each of you come in and, I think sharing your voice and sharing your own service and leadership with our community will mean so much. And so I think in many ways, so first I'll jump into the theme, but as we know with the conference this year, I'll get to that in a little bit, but with the conference, it's gotten a little complicated, but I will say that, the theme will very much live on in spirit throughout this entire presidential year. So for anybody who is who was able to probably gather a lot of the probably 500 emails that you see, likely from me, that you probably saw what the conference theme was. So I certainly titled it in this way for a specific reason, but it's called At the Intersections: Equity, Advocacy, and Activism Across the Lifespan. And so with that particular theme, for people who know me really well, they know that the bread and butter of my work is intersectionality. And so much of this work certainly has really related particularly to a variety of different interests that have been exponentially, probably I would say, proliferated, particularly within AADA. And I think we see that, right, with adult development, that there are a number of issues that we're addressing that are across the entire adult lifespan, so 18 and above. And then, of course, we're seeing a particular amplifying the voice around gerontology, aging, and older adults. And so I think in that vein, we're seeing so many of these different milestones across the lifespan, certainly with a variety of these different factors. And so I will say, for me, like, of course, like, intersectionality is the bread and butter of my work. And I think some people here might be saying, what in the world is intersectionality? And I think it has been so much more than just multiple identities or diverse identities. I think I've gotten tired of hearing that as a buzzword, right? That it's become that synonym for multiple identities and diverse identities. But really, intersectionality is it's contingent on all of us seeing the different ways that we see our privilege and oppression, the different ways that we see equity and inequities within our policies and social structures. And it's enriched the way that we've created advocacy, activist, and social justice agendas. And so in many ways, it's not just this passive process, right? It's an active process. And I will say, as I think about intersectionality, that, we're constantly, it takes this collaborative effort from all of us, this community effort that really transcends so much of the work that we're doing. And so I will say, as you think about intersectionality and how it relates to AADA, a major part of this for me and why this is so important is really understanding too that yes, diversity, equity, and inclusion are important and have been important as a part of the life force within our division. And at the same time, I wanted to be relevant, particularly to see intersectionality, not again as this concept that we just talked about, but a concept that we're doing. And one in which we see intersectionality not just also as a way to understand like political, social, community forces, but really to understand that it's a developmental force. And I think in many ways that I think of intersectionality as a developmental concept, one that we're still reinvigorating throughout the entire lifespan. So I think that's the spirit of the theme that was underlying our conference this year. And it is also the spirit of the presidential theme. And so I'll explain in a little bit where that's going to go, but I wanted to share that with each of you. And so, so that's one piece. The second piece, I think, just operationally, I'm also going to say that we're of course like seeing a lot happen, particularly within our within the United States, what we're seeing globally, and what we're seeing right now in each of our respective work settings. So when I think about particularly what we're seeing, right, it's important for us to actively address and be at the helm of addressing Medicare legislation. It's important for us to continue cultivating partnerships with other divisions. I think in many ways, what I've been seeing, right, is that there have been a lot of other, of course, like, we're seeing that, diversity, equity, and inclusion, particularly as it relates to intersectionality, has always been, or have always been, a part of our division, and certainly have been relevant to our division. And I think in many ways that we can certainly take a voice in that, and also continue to create some of those different partnerships with some of our other divisions within ACA. So when I think about the other 17 divisions, we have plenty of ground to cover. I think right now, I've been in talks with some of the other division leaders, and particularly with Dr. Kim Lee Hughes, who will also be the president of the Association for Multicultural Counseling and Development come July 1st. So, it's funny. It's like, you feel like you go through a cohort. You go through a cohort with presidents when you're a division president, and I feel like that's what's happening. So in many ways, I've been doing some outreach now to create some of those partnerships. And I think what's relevant is in each of those partnerships, it's not just about us, okay, we're going to create a webinar together and that's it, right? Those offerings are relevant and important, but at the same time, those partnerships will certainly, we want to do more than that, right? Like, what kinds of events could we put up together? What kinds of particular statements, position statements can we put together that feature both of our divisions? And I think, and part of that will certainly fall into our membership engagement, right? So with membership engagement, we want members not necessarily to be siloed, right? And say like, you're only a member of AADA, or you're only a member of AMCD, or you're only a member of, now it's a different name, but SAGE, which is formerly known as Algebatech, right? So, or that you're a member of ACCA, American College Counseling Association. So I think in many ways, so much of our interest and our missions line up together really nicely. So again, that comes back to my point about membership engagement. The other piece here is also thinking about the ways that we're seeing our revenue streams really grow, right? And so I think in other ways, I've been, as I've seen our division and the life force within our division, we are certainly active in particularly in terms of our relationships, in terms of our community. And I think that continues to be the life force. And I think operationally, I'm looking at ways that we can build in or strengthen our revenue streams, particularly within the Association for Adult Development and Aging. We've seen that, of course, come to light with some of the different webinars that we featured, and that's going to continue growing. I think in many ways that the revenue streams, certainly there are other ways that we can also add on top of that and still continue to strengthen the ones that we have. And so I think I wanted to highlight that as a way to think for everybody to certainly think about ways that, that you get excited about not only supporting the division, but being involved in it. The other piece here is leadership development. So I think, it's really funny because I've created emerging leaders programs for other organizations. And I think and I'm excited that with my hopes for this year that I will be, we'll create one, we'll start small, right? But create an emerging leaders program in AADA. Because I think in many ways we've been doing so well at our relationships, our community, and our mentorship. And I think this is a way to onboard, especially new leadership, right? And so I think in those capacities, we're seeing leadership development really grow. And I think in that way, I'm also planning to work actively with our each of our leaders who are currently in elected and voting member positions and seeing how, okay, well, what can I do to also be a support during this time, and certainly make sure that, you know, this is somewhere where if like in my role as president, I need to be actively advocating for you in that way. And so I'll certainly be having chats with each of our elected voting board members, but I also want to discuss like the importance, right, of our committee chairs and task force chairs, and that they're also supported too. And so I think in that vein, in terms of leadership development, that is also part of my role as an active role in moving to the president role. It's making sure that each of our that, you know, so you like if you're going to be a task force chair or a committee chair throughout this coming year. I will be doing some outreach in just a moment this month. But I do want to let you know that I will be reaching out and I will be checking in, and just to make sure, like, hey, is everything cool? Like, what can I do? Is there anything that I need to bring to the rest of the voting board members? Like, we'll definitely talk. So I think in that way, there's also that leadership development piece. The other aspect of that leadership development is I'll be setting up committees and task forces so that it's not just you know, I think we've all done some really fantastic work, and I think we certainly can have committees and task forces that aren't just one or two members, right? But consistently with multiple members in a committee or task force. And so I'm going to be setting up appointments with that, and I want to highlight that with those appointments. That my hope is that throughout these next coming years that we'll of course like set some term limits if that's needed, but at the same time we'll make sure that, you know, there's continued rotation and there's different ways to involve new leaders, leaders who have been serving in committee member roles. So the other piece here is connection with state branches. So I know we've also had state branch presidents. So for example, like Dr. Crystal Neal, who certainly has been a fundamental force within our division. And so, and is now a voting board member, right? But I think in this way with state branches, you know, for my role as president too, it's important for us to maintain our connection with state branches. And so I do want to say for anybody who's on our meeting today that if you're a member of a state branch or even a state division, one where you're like, okay, I'm a member of, I don't know if this actually exists, but like Illinois College Counseling Association, anything like that. But if that exists, I'm also, so there are two different ways that I would like to highlight that I can be a support. One is I'd be happy to join in as a guest to your meeting and just to connect with your members. I think that would be important. And the second is if you need me to send letters to your members, I'm happy to do that too. So the communication, so we can keep that ongoing. So there's that piece. So the two pieces I want to highlight from here on out, right? So now that I've talked to you about the spirit, like of the overall vision, and then the spirit of like some of the different operational pieces that I'm involving this year. So one thing I'm going to highlight for all of our members is that I will be sending out a Google form probably within this week or next week. And I'll send it out to the, it's only going to go out to members. So if you're not a member, I would encourage you to join because I would be really excited about you serving on one of our committees or task forces. So I will be sending out a Google form with a full list of different committees and task forces that you can be involved in. And you know, and the reason why I'm gonna say like have your email, and you'll see this, there's gonna be an email and phone number there, because I do wanna make sure that this is intentional, right? That your purpose together with a committee or task force that you feel very connected to. You know, I think we've all been in spaces where the connection that we have with our committee or task force or service or role of service certainly continues to maintain our long-term engagement. So I will say that that has been an important part of certainly what kept me involved and what kept me connected. It was because of the people. in AADA, the leaders in AADA that have mattered so much to me. And so again, like, I just want, it's like I'm being intentional and purposeful with the way that we're going to move forward with committee and task force leadership and service. So, sorry, I realize I don't have water or coffee next to me, and that's kind of a detriment right now. So, all right. So, with that being said, the last two pieces I'm going to highlight is with our conference this year. So, right now we know that we're in the middle of a serious disaster and crisis with COVID-19. And I know we've seen a lot of different responses to it. And I think, after some discussion with some of our board members, that I think the move has been that we're planning to move to some form of a virtual format. And the reason why is because I think with everybody right now, like, I know that we're probably all feeling it right now in terms of the recovery. But I think that recovery is going to continue to move into the summer too. And I think people are at the end of different forms of recovery, right? Whether it's their recovery for their wellness or recovery for even like finances, financial resources, and recovery from career transitions and such. And so I think in many ways, in order to protect the safety of our members and our attendees for the conference, we won't be holding an in-person conference this year. But I will say that, we, to certainly substitute many of those experiences, right, there will be several different opportunities to participate. Again, it's not just through committee and task force leadership or service, but there's also going to be different ways that I'll be soliciting speakers and different ways that we'll have full-blown panel presentations that will be presented through a virtual format, because that's what I wanted to do with the conference. And sadly, we can't have that, but we can have it virtually. So that's going to be in effect. And then, of course, I'm also going to set up town hall meetings where it will function very much similar to this, where it's like a business meeting, maybe a much more informal, but town hall meetings where we have the opportunity to connect and the opportunity to really figure out what kinds of inquiries some of our members have, what kinds of gaps are happening for members, and what kinds of needs are our members requiring in terms of what they need in terms of their membership, but also in terms of what they need to function well in their specific or respective work setting. So that's what we certainly will substitute in different ways with moving away from the in-person format this year. And for everybody, knock on wood, cross your fingers that I've already been working and talking with Dr. John Nance about the 2021 conference, and we plan to have that in person. And of course, right now, with our fingers crossed, we will be meeting all together again in person for ACA 2021, which we all know is in Orlando. So I hope to see you there next spring. So I think that's what where we're at with the conference. And of course, like, we'll with the webinar series, we'll be talking. I also know the very soon to be Dr. Janelle Jones, who is going to be the task force chair, professional development task force chair, who's on our meeting today, will certainly be at the helm of moving us through in that professional development task force with our webinars throughout this coming year, this coming fiscal year. So other than that, feel free to reach out to me. I'll also put in the chat box, I'll put in my email, but of course I'll send out my email. You see me all the time on ACA Connect. So certainly I'll be sending out my contact info if you ever need to reach out to me, if you ever have questions from today's meeting, and or if you have some ideas that you'd like for us to talk about, because it's always about when somebody pitches an idea to me, right? My first question is not why, but why not? And I always ask why not, because it's like, all right, so you know me, right? It's like, all right, this is great for us to talk about it, but let's make it happen. So what can we do to make it happen? And that's the perspective I often bring in terms of my own roles of leadership. So with that being said, I think, yeah, so that's the way that I'm gonna discuss the vision right now. So let's see. I think the next piece here on our agenda is also talking about the budget, right? So I know Dr. John Nance is here with us, and so I'm gonna go ahead and stop the share and put the share now on the budget. And so just so we can go through this and talk about any questions that you might have, but oh, Dr. Nance, you are here with us. I love it.
I am here. I'm at my mother's house, actually, in Florida. So technology has been interesting.
Got it. Got it.
So I'm glad to be here with y'all. I've got the proposed budget in front of me, and I can also then share with where we are at with assets if necessary.
Okay, sure, sure. So, so I will say I have received from our voting board members a couple of points of feedback, and one I'm going to highlight here is that the projected revenue is a bit high moving into the virtual conference of $5,000. So I think here it's probably going to be much lower, but still will set us up above our anticipated expenses. And so I shared the screen, particularly with our budget here. And so I'm going to go through this very briefly. I'm not going to read every item off to all of you because we could be here for 3 days doing that, and we are not going to do that. I think it's going to be information overload, and I can't do that to y'all. I really can't. So one of the most common ways that our fiscally how our division has certainly stayed strong is really through our membership, our journal, and through our conference. And I know that's changed a lot throughout this year. The one piece that I will add that has been added as a revenue stream is our webinar series. So, and that has been, we're trying to really, because this has been so new for us, we'll be tightening this out through this coming fiscal year too. So there will be a lot of energy around that. And certainly through our soliciting different speakers on a variety of different topics. Okay, so with the anticipated expenses, so the anticipated expenses. So here, it's usually our conference also happens to be the most expensive piece. And a lot of that is certainly cut out because we're not renting a physical space. So I do want to add that that's generally going to be cut out. The other piece is that we are required to, of course, hold a business meeting at ACA because we are, we still have to meet our 501c3 status. And so we are required to have a business meeting every year, annually, at least once. And so in that business meeting, we have to hold at ACA. And it also means that we also have to hold a board meeting at ACA and a board meeting at the conference or at our national conference annually. So generally, we usually split up some of the funding between both conferences. But because of this fiscal year and how unique it is with COVID-19, a lot of that is driven into the future for ACA 2021. So certainly with that being said, that's where some of our expenses will go. What you're looking at with the conference expenses, that has a lot to do with our booth and any miscellaneous expenses that we have to support the division while we're at the conference. So flyers, promotional materials, our booth, which we revived after many years in New Orleans in 2019 and was kind of a hit actually. We had a lot of fun with that. We really did. So that's where that's coming from. The other piece too is that we're we're also going to have our, what I'm also going to propose this year is an AADA Emerging Leaders Program. And so we can still keep that certainly fiscally responsible, and still, and it won't cost a lot, but I think it's important in terms of promoting professional development for our members and promoting leadership development among our members. The other expenses that we can anticipate here, one is part of what I hope for this year, which I didn't mention earlier, is I've been also talking with Dr. John Nance about switching the platforms for our website to give it more life. And so I think, you know, Dr. John Nance has been very gracious in figuring out ways to certainly build upon our potential for our website, not just in terms of the management, but more so in the platform, right? Because I think, you know, WordPress is kind of like, that's the one it's on right now. And I think there are some other, we're exploring different ideas, particularly with like Squarespace, and Squarespace has been one that we've explored. So that's one of the newer expenses that we're seeing here. The other is, of course, like with the webinars, we're having a Zoom account established, particularly for AADA. So that's the other piece here. The other major cost is also our ACA management services. So ACA members, the membership services office actually covers us in terms of much of our membership operations. So they handle the day-to-day, they handle some of the division, and that just streamlines a lot of the process, especially for each of you who are AADA members and ACA members, right? Because then it's easy to just pop into your and reconnect all your accounts, right? Rather than having it separate. I've seen some divisions who've had it completely separate, and I think we can see that, you know, there's differences and there's different benefits and drawbacks. And I think for us as a division, we functioned really well with our ACA management services and working together with them collaboratively. Any questions? Oh, looking at the chat box too. Oh, sorry. Let me, is that better? Sorry, I just saw the some questions about the budget being a little bit hard to read. So and thank you for the clarification, Dr. Randolph. Any questions? Dr. Nance, do you have any additional context that you want to weigh in with?
Actually, I don't, Christian. As we look at our assets, we are in good standing as an association. We have a 25-month CD that is at $46,074, and our operating account is at $14,594 and cents. And our total assets at this point are $61,673, if that's helpful in discussing the budget for next year. So, and I know, Christian, you've worked very hard on this, and it's been a privilege to work with you on it. And I, personally and as professionally as treasurer, I believe it is sound and in a good place.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nance. So even, you know, I think everybody got a good perspective of what's on our budget, but also what's in our current assets and finances. And so I know that some of the feedback that I received from some of our voting board members is that with that virtual conference or virtual format for any type of moving our conference to that virtual format. It is a bit high with 5,000, so we can certainly look at, even if we lower that, we'll still be higher than our anticipated expenses. So I did want to put that out there. And I think, you know, normally in a standard year, right, where we're all meeting in person, we would vote on this. But what I'm also going to do is take some of the edits and any feedback from this meeting, and then finalize the edits, and of course, like run it to the entire membership. So we will have a voting platform available to you. So in case where you can vote yay, nay, or abstain with the budget. So so that's what you can also expect within these coming weeks in terms of the budget. Okay.
Okay.
So
Thank you so much, Christian
no problem.
and John. Thank you both for your hard work on this. It's not a small undertaking. We're appreciative. All right.
Okay, I'm putting that back.
Sure. One last bit of business. Is Katie still on?
I am.
Wonderful. Would you be willing to walk us through nomination election information?
So I'm going to post the information in the chat as well as my email address. This year we have one open position, and that's for president-elect. It is a 3-year term. Requirements, qualifications to be president-elect are 1 year with the division and 1 year on the council. So having been a voting member of the board, I am happy to accept any nominations. My email is there. So if you or somebody you know are interested in the position, please let me know and we will put our ballot together. But that's all I've got open for this year. That's it.
Thank you. When are you looking to have those nominations by?
That is a good question. I need to look up the final date, so as soon as possible for now, and I can look up our final date and get that out in one of our newsletters or communication.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you so much. All right. Okay. Thank you. And I'm looking at the chat right now. Perfect. Okay. Are there other items for discussion? Is there anything from our membership that you've been biding your time on and would like to bring forth as long as we are gathered in a group today? Okay. Hearing none, I'm wondering if you could, Christian, get us back to gallery view for those of us who have it on there. Perfect. Thank you. I like to pretend I'm looking people in the eye as I'm talking. If you do have additional things that you'd like to talk through, we'll be starting those town hall meetings. I'd like to have one toward the end of May, and perhaps one in June as well. And then I know that's something that Christian has talked about continuing as he takes leadership of the division in July. So there will be more of an informal format to try to make up for the really fantastic, enriching, life-giving conversations that happen when we all are allowed to gather in person that we're missing out on this spring. So we're looking to have a virtual platform to do that, because those ideas that are shared and the connections that are made, they are what make this division so special. So we want to provide a platform for that the best we can in these current circumstances. So be on the lookout for information about that. If you have any questions or comments or concerns, don't hesitate to reach out. I will also share my email address in chat in just a moment, because I can't type and talk at the same time. And if there is nothing else, I will go ahead and move to close the meeting at 4:02. And then we don't have to vote on that, right? I'm looking at Kristen. You're down here on my screen.
I can vote, so I motion to adjourn the meeting at 4:02 p.m. Central Time. Oh,
Excellent. Is there a second?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, BJ?
Oh, I said I second, but somebody else said it.
Oh. I think it might have been you.
Oh, okay, then I second.
All right.
Okay, who moved? Was it Katie? Who moved this?
Christian.
Christian. Okay, and then I second Christian. Okay, thanks.
Excellent. Oh, it's so good to see you all. All in favor of adjourning? Aye. Okay. Any opposed? We can stay and chat. All right. Have a wonderful afternoon or evening, depending on your time zone. Take care until next time.
I should end this meeting. Okay, I'm gonna end it. All right, bye everyone.